From Wall Street to Main Street to help small business owners have the same capital as corporate America and give them the same resources as a larger company. We cover business funding, business credit, scaling, business consulting, and much more. Check out the website at shieldadvisorygroup.com. Welcome to the show, The Liquid Lunch Project.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Liquid Lunch Project. I am Matthew Armihan, alongside my partner, the Professor Luigi Rosa Bianca. What's on tap today, Lou?
Matt, when you're running a business, inevitably, you are a human resource manager. You're coordinating people, you're coordinating a team, and that team tends to excel if they get along. And they get along usually if there's some sort of bonding. And businesses for decades have tried all sorts of tinkering and tricks in creating team bonding. You know, we've had the weekend getaways, we've got the cruises, we've got the Disney this and the Hyatt that. But every so often, someone really sharp and really intelligent comes across a corporate bonding experience that is unparalleled. And he's here today. Dave Albin, the founder and inventor of Firewalk Adventures. Dave, I fear having you on the podcast because I think you're going to invite us for a firewalk. But explain to us what your premise is for the firewalk, and welcome to the podcast.
Well, thanks, guys. Really honored to be here. Well, you know, it started with experience, right? The Firewalking, Firewalk Productions came to be in 2014, and that's because you know, I'm driving down the road one day and Google called me and said, "Hey, Dave Albin, are you the guy that does the firewalks for Tony Robbins?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And they said, "Well, we'd like to talk to you. So if you're not under any contractual obligation or non-compete, we'd like to talk to you about hiring you." And I'm like, "Okay, well, tell me about the date and, you know, this and that." The next thing I know, I'm asking them, "Well, you know, what's your budget for this?" And they told me, you know, and I looked at it and I went, "Hey, I can work with you guys." And so that's where it began. Literally, you guys, it was so interesting. They wanted to do a firewalk, but we ended up doing a glass walk. And the reason for that, because there was a graduation. They had 148 executives, and it was in Mountain View at corporate headquarters. And they wanted to anchor in this experience. And they wanted to do a firewalk, but they wanted to do it in the middle of the day. And I said, "Guys, I can't do it in the middle of the day." And the reason for that is I have to be able to see those coals. I have to see the color. I have to see the intensity. So, you know, we could always do a glass walk instead. And they went, "What? A glass walk? Ooh, tell us about that." Well, that's what we ended up doing.
Because assuming the glass walk is less intense than the firewalk.
You'd be surprised. You know, there's...
I think I'd be more afraid to do a glass walk than I would a firewalk.
It's about 50-50, actually. Yeah. In fact, most of my firewalking community, they will tell you, "Oh, yeah, I'll firewalk all day long, but walking on glass," because we've all cut ourselves, right? So we kind of know that that's a very painful thing, or stuck ourselves with a piece of glass or stepped on it or whatever. So it could be pretty frightening, that's for sure. But it's like anything else. There's technique. There's a way to do it. And once you know the way to do it, it's very safe. So that's kind of where it all started for me. But what led up to that was on June 8th of 1988, I was grossly addicted to heroin, cocaine, alcohol, cigarettes, chocolate chip cookies. So I was a mess, man. And when I woke up that morning, I said, "This is it. I'm done. I'm out." And what I did was I was considering suicide, but I was thinking, you know, I'm married to a woman who's got 3 kids. I can't do that, man. I can't do that to those kids, right? Because we know when somebody commits suicide, you kill everybody around you as well. So I ended up calling Alcoholics Anonymous. And they sent a man to come pick me up. I went to 4 meetings that day, and it stuck. In fact, I just celebrated on June 8th here a few days ago, 35 years of continuous sobriety.
Hear, hear.
Yeah, hey, thanks. I appreciate it, really do. But here's what happened. So when I got into AA, I had insomnia, so I was up late at night all the time. Well, one night I'm up late, 3:00 in the morning, in 1988, and there he is, the man himself, Mr. Infomercial, being taken care of by Gunthy Ranker, and there he is. Tony Robbins is selling personal power. Personal power was a 30-day program back in those days, and you would buy it. He'd send it to you. It came on these little white things called cassette tapes. Right? So probably some of your listeners don't even know what those are, right? And so I went through it, and I did what Mr. Robbins asked me to do on the tapes, and it worked. Well, I turned around as I was getting into this. Right after I did Tony's program, I started a new business. I started working out. I started losing weight, and my attitude really shifted, much more in a positive line, if you will. Well, one of my good buddies in AA was watching me. He's going, dude, what's going on with you? Why are you so positive all the time? And I'm like, well, I went through this program by Tony Robbins. And he goes, oh, really? I know who Tony Robbins is. I read his book. And I said, well, hey, I've got this program if you want to borrow it. He did. 7 years later, he calls me on the phone. Hey, Dave, Tony Robbins coming to town. You got me into this. Go with me. Sure, when is it? Okay, I can go. He says, great, I'll call you back. He calls me back like an hour later, and he goes, done. We pick up the tickets at will call. Here's what they told us to do. Number one, bring snacks. You are going to spend a lot of time in the room. What an understatement that is. Drink a lot of water. Hydrate. Bring a good attitude and be ready to play full out. And I said, Dan, how much was the ticket? He said, $700 in 1995, right? What is that? $7,000 now? 7.2 million, whatever that is. And so I said, yeah, you bet. I'll play full out. And he's getting ready to get off the phone. He goes, oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you, we're going to be doing a firewalk. And I remember thinking, my first thought was, oh, hell no. Oh, no. Ain't going to do that. We'll leave that for the crazies. I mean, I want to see Tony, but there's no way I'm going to go do this firewalk. But I'm not telling my buddy that.
I feel assured now that you and I have the same common approach to this whole firewall.
Yeah. No. Yeah, it's a hard no, hell no. Well, I'm not doing it. Okay, well, all right. So you get to the event. Tony takes the stage at 2:00 in the afternoon. 3,500 people at this event. Next thing I know, you guys, it's after midnight, right? I've been in a room with Tony Robbins for 10 hours along with 3,500 people.
Did you run out of snacks?
Yeah, well, I certainly understood why he said bring snacks. And all of a sudden it's after midnight, and all of a sudden Tony goes, take your shoes off. And I'm like, oh, no. Oh, hell no. I see what you're doing, Robbins. You're not tricking me. Well, I got 3,500 people, and they're all taking their shoes off. And I'm like, people, no, don't do it. Don't fall for the trap, right? So now, as he gets you ready to go outside, he gets everybody chanting, right? So now you're walking out there going, yes, 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 3,500 people. It gets worse. When you get out there, you're in this giant parking lot, big enough to do a firewalk for 3,500 people. He's got African drummers, right? So now it's dun, 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 dun. Guys, it's insane. There's nothing like it on earth other than a Tony Robbins seminar to my knowledge. But when you get out there, he's got this giant fire over here that he's been building and rendering it all day. It's probably 30 feet wide and it's 70 feet long. It's huge. And so what they did was to logistically set this up, they would take a wheelbarrow over, they'd load the coals in a wheelbarrow, they'd bring it over in between 2 lanes of sod, of grass, which is about 3 feet wide, 18 feet long, called a fire lane. And then they just took flathead shovels and they sprinkled those coals on that grass, and that's what you walked on. Well, I'm not doing it. So my strategy is just go hide in the back. Nobody's going to know. Well, here's the thing. Tony brought firewalking into his events because he studied it. He knows. Firewalking's been around for 1,000 years and used for all kinds of stuff. Rites of passage, graduation, ceremonial, very spiritual connection. The Phoenicians and the people of India and the Indo-Europeans, the Polynesians, the Hawaiians, the Native American Indians. All these cultures, the people of Portugal, they've been doing this for a long time. Well, Tony decided to use it in his seminars because he gets leverage on you, right? You step through a fear. And again, once you've done it, you can ask yourself, okay, if I can walk on coals that are 1,000 degrees, what else can I do? So the bottom line is he doesn't want anybody to miss out on this life-changing, paradigm shift experience. So he knows there's going to be a bunch of people like me hiding in the back. So what's he do? He trains people to come get you. Literally, you guys, I'm standing there back by myself. And all of a sudden, here comes this guy out of nowhere. And he makes eye contact with me. And Robbins must teach him to do that. Once you make eye contact with him, don't take your eyes off him. Well, hell, he gets about 20 feet from me and he looks at me with this puzzled look on his face. And he goes, he looks at me, he goes, "Are you okay?" And when we're not okay, we all say the same thing, right? "I'm fine. I'm good. No problem here. Move along. I'm good. Nothing to see here." And all of a sudden he says, "Hey, so are you going to walk tonight?" And I said, "Absolutely not." And I said it to him in that tone, right? Thinking he'd leave. And he goes, "Hey, man, that's cool. Not a problem. We don't want you to do anything you don't want to do." And I thought, cool, I like this guy. He's going to get me out of here. Well, here's where it got really interesting. Here's a stranger. I don't know who this guy is to this day. But without him, I'm not here on your podcast today, right? Because he said, "Well, wouldn't you at least like to watch?" And I thought, yeah, that should be interesting. Let's do that. Let's go watch these people burn their feet off. Well, he says, "Listen, man, you can't see anything from back here. Literally, I'm 100 yards away. I can't see anything." They started walking. People are chanting yes, and the drums are going, and it's intense. And people are starting to walk, and I can hear it. They're screaming, they're yelling, they're celebrating. But I got 3,500 people standing in front of me. I can't see anything. And he said, "Well, just get in line," right? And eventually you'll be able to get up to where you can see it. And, in his defense, he's telling the truth. So I got in line. I'm just kind of walking along, and all of a sudden this guy comes up to me and he whispers in my ear. And he said, "He knows when you're ready. When he says go, you go." And pew, he just disappeared into the night. Like, what the hell was that? Who was that? What's that about? And all of a sudden I can't see in front of me, but I get to a point where I can actually look and see at an angle. And you guys are doing it. They're walking on hot coals. Every race, every creed, every color, every age. It's a sight unlike you've ever seen in your entire life. And now I'm staring at it, right? I'm like, I'm in a trance. It's kind of like, when you go by a car accident, don't look at the accident. Yeah, right. We all stare at it. Well, that's what I was doing. And so I'm just in this zone, right? I'm just mesmerized. And all of a sudden I'm walking along, boom, there I am. I'm at the front of the line. And now I'm staring into the abyss. I'm looking at this fire lane. It's 3 feet wide, 18 feet long, and they sprinkled those coals on there. And they're glowing bright red. There's no question that they're hot. Well, there's also a wheelbarrow sitting there, and you can feel the heat coming off. And as I'm staring into the abyss, there's a trainer standing there. And all of a sudden, the trainer goes, "Eyes up." I bring my eyes up. Well, duh. I'm in a room with Robbins for 10 hours. Guess what he teaches you to do? Keep your eyes up. Don't stare at what you fear. Real important lesson here, right? He's like, look to the celebration end. That's where the reward is. Well, so now my eyes are up, and he goes, "Squeeze your fist and say yes." And I went, "Yes." And he went, "Stronger." And I went, "Yes." Well, he could tell I wasn't in a peak state. He knew I was leaving a lot on the table, so he screamed at me. Really kind of ticked me off. And I screamed at the top of my lungs, yes, threw my hands in the air, and he goes, "Go, go, go." Ooh. I took off. Well, here's the first thing I learned about firewalking. When you take the first step, you'll take the second, third, fourth, and fifth. I guarantee you that you are not going to stop. Well, Tony positions 2 people at the end of the fire lane, and they lock arms, and they stop you. So when I got there, they said, "Stop, wipe your feet and celebrate." And I'm starting to wipe my feet, and I'm starting to celebrate, and all of a sudden, I go, "Oh my gosh, I've burnt myself really bad." And I pull up my right foot, and I look at it. It's dirty, but there's no burn. Oh, it's my other foot. I look at it. It's dirty, but there's no burn. And now I'm looking back. The coals are bright red, and I felt exhilarated. It was unbelievable how powerful that experience was right on the spot. It's not like you have to wait for it. The reward is right there, right now. And you're also in a celebration inn with 3,500 people, and they're all celebrating. And again, it's unlike anything I've ever experienced in my life. Well, here's where it gets interesting. It's an interesting twist. So this is a 4-day event. It's called UPW, Unleash the Power Within, the Firewalk Experience. Day 1, we do it that night. So now it's day 2, and I come into the event. We're all standing in the foyer. 3,500 people get ready to go into the venue, and I've never to this day seen anything like it. People were humanistically connected. like unlike anything I'd ever seen. You're back to what you were saying, Luigi, with the camaraderie part of this, right? I mean, people were laughing. They were crying. They were hugging. They were talking. They were communicating. And again, when your self-worth, your self-confidence, and your self-belief gets risen, and the frequency changes of what you think and believe about yourself, when you can do that collectively as a group, you all rise together. And that's how it works. And again, to this day, I've never seen anything like it in my life. Well, later on in the event, I met one of Tony's trainers. His name's Ted Macy. And so I was talking to Ted, and I'm like, wow, man, this must be really awesome to come here and be in this environment on a regular basis. And he goes, oh, yeah, it is. It's incredible. And he said, as a matter of fact, you see all these people over here wearing these black shirts with the pink writing on them? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, they're all volunteers. So listen, man, if you'd like to come back and be part of this, when you get home, call Robbins Research and tell them you'd like an application to become a volunteer crew member. I did that. And sure enough, a month later, after the event, I did that, and they sent me a letter that said, Dave Albin, congratulations. You've been selected to crew with the Anthony Robbins companies in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Well, that was it. That was in 95, a couple of months after I had attended. Well, when they look at your application, they look at your skills and they kind of decide where they're going to put you. So I had a military background, had a security background, so they put me on the security team helping take care of Tony's celebrities. And then because I lived on a farm, knew how to use tools, knew how to run equipment, knew what a log splitter was, how to use a hatchet, they put me on the fire building team, which is exactly what I wanted. And then the next thing I know, the following year, 96, they offered me a subcontracting position. Because as a volunteer, you pay your way, you pay everything. When you become a subcontractor, they pay your way. They pay your airfare, your hotel, pay a per diem, and a small salary. Well, to fast forward this, in 2003, I'm in Date with Destiny with Tony in the Bahamas at the Atlantis Hotel. And they pulled me into the office and said, hey, Albie, we'd like to offer you the position as fire captain. And I originally said, well, I can't. And they were like, well, why? We can ask. And I said, well, because I homeschool my kids. And Tony immediately said, well, what if we pay to have your family travel with us? Would that make a difference? Well, you think? So the next thing you know, guys, in 2003, my family and I are on the road full-time with Tony Robbins. In 2005, we went to London, and Tony and I set a world record. We firewalked 12,300 people. Now I want to disclose, Guinness Book was not there, but there's never been a firewalk anywhere close to that many people other than another Tony Robbins seminar. So I say a world record. And then, there it was, man. I'm deeply immersed in the personal development industry. I got a call from T.R. Veckard. I started doing some work for him. I did some work for Wayne Dyer, which was unbelievable. And then in 2014, as I was mentioned earlier, man, I'm driving down the road and Google called me. And then that's when I was, after we did the first glass walk, we were at lunch and I'm having a conversation with one of the executives. And she said, hey, she goes, listen, I'm not trying to tell you what to do, but we've researched you and researched corporate team building experiences at this level. You may want to go start your own business because you're at the top of the mountain. And corporations and CEOs are starving for corporate team building experiences that actually cause incredible change, cause a paradigm shift. So you may want to think about it. So, Google's telling you there's a marketplace for this. You may want to listen, right? And so, I went home and started Firewalk Productions. And the next thing I know, I was at NASA, Notre Dame, Chick-fil-A, Remax, Virginia Tech, the EO organization, an entrepreneurs organization. I know you guys know who they are. I did 5 gigs for them last year. And so pretty much my entire career has been grown organically in creating these incredible, life-changing corporate team building experiences.
Wow, what a story. Dave, I got a question for you. How
Sure.
does that shift for you, right? So you're working with Tony Robbins, you're flying all over the world, you're doing his events, now you're starting your own business.
Yeah.
You had to have a lot of learning lessons inside that period, from going from working from somebody to shifting to running your own.
Yeah. Well, I knew I was ready. Again, if Google tells you there's a huge marketplace for corporate team building, you should listen, right? And I did. And I kind of knew it. You guys, I'd been with him at that point coming into 20 years, 19 plus years, I'd been with him. And so I knew there was no question what it was causing. I knew there was a market. And, in fact, when I went back to Tony and told him what was going on, He knew, and he understood. I mean, we sat in the green room and talked for a couple of hours about the career with him, right? I mean, I was with him at 9/11. You know, we changed hundreds of thousands of people's lives with that Firewalk experience. So, you know, and I told him, look, you don't need me anymore, Tony. You're good. I got your back. You got 6 people on that team right now that can do my job. Pick one. They've all been trained. They're all cross-trained. They know what to do. So I knew, you know what I mean? When you know, I knew there was a big marketplace for this. And I knew that I was one of the top people in the world to be able to facilitate that. And, I was correct. Again, next thing you know, you're at NASA. Really? Now you're dealing with astronauts. We did a glass walk there too. And when you walk an astronaut on glass and he comes back and tells you and goes, hey, that's pretty spooky. It's like, really, dude? You're riding around in the shuttle and you're telling me that my glass walk experience helped change your life. I mean, it's pretty cool.
There are a lot of organizations out there that are doing corporate bonding at a very high level, in endurance events, high intensity sporting events. My partner Matt ran with the Bulls last year.
Yeah, Luigi backed out. He told me he didn't want to run with the Bulls. Had to take him to the gym.
He told me they were donkeys, and then the night before he told me they were bulls. But do you think there's something visceral about fire? I mean, it's just sort of like a natural instinct of the strength and the heat of fire, and maybe that puts you at a different level.
Well, it's an element, right? And as I say all the time, what doesn't challenge you doesn't change you. Not everybody's going to be able to compete with running with the Bulls or sporting events and things, for corporate team building. There's always going to be those people that's not going to happen. They're just not. They're not physically up for that, right? But if they can walk, then I can get them across the fire. The other thing I do, guys, that brings it in, which is really powerful as well, is I bring in the board break experience. So what I do there is I have them break a board. It's a martial arts move, right? Real simple. I can do kids, adults, teenagers, doesn't matter. I can do all of them, right? So what I have them do is write something on front of the board they want to move towards. I have them write something on back of the board they need to move away from. I invite them to write anybody's name on that board that they're in conflict with. If forgiveness and reconciliation is part of that relationship, then write their name on the board. It ends tonight. And then to create the rite of passage, I have them write anybody's name on that board that they've lost to bring in the spirit of that person they've lost. So they break the board. We go out to the firewalk. We do the firewalk. They circle back and they throw their board into the fire. So now it becomes a double whammy. So when you take 10 people or 30 people or 300 people, I don't care, and you put them through that type of experiences, the next day when they all come together, they're bonded. There's camaraderie, there's connection. And I don't care what happened before. It can be a bunch of screaming, mask wearing, not mask wearing, vaccine, political. I love Donald Trump. I hate Donald Trump. The fire doesn't care, Luigi. And that's really, I love it because I think that's where your question was coming from. The fire brings you back together. Think about it. When you're a kid sitting around a campfire, talking with your buddies or friends or family and how uniting that is. So yes, the fire's magical. And I always say, let the fire do what the fire does.
Let me introduce another element, that of fear, right? As a hobby man knows, I love to sail, right? And all of my life, I've been blessed enough maybe to do hundreds and hundreds of sails, right? But, half the times you're having a beer, you're going out into the sound, you're coming back, game over. Every once in a while, Mother Nature has a trick up her sleeve, and she'll heel the boat right down to the water. You'll take on water and you'll have lightning, and it's scary as shit. And I got to tell you, you have a circle of sailing buddies, and when you bump into them, they'll remember that one frightening sail from 20 years ago, but they'll never mention the 200 sails in between. What is it about fear that creates such a bonding experience with humans?
Because I think the shift is the acronym. You shift from forget everything and run to face everything and rise. And so when you make that shift and you do it collectively together, as you said, 200 sales, everything was great, blue skies, it's all beautiful. All hell breaks loose. You're going to remember that one. Because if you firewalk with somebody and you haven't seen them in 5 years and you're walking through the grocery store and there they are, guess what? It's instant. The bond that you shared back then immediately takes hold. And so again, that's why it's such a powerful corporate team building experience. So when you bring people together, especially now, right, when there's all this dissension and screaming and yelling about this and that, well, guess what? The fire fixes that. And so, and you know this, and everybody listening on your podcast, if they've got a business, they know if their people get along and they work together well, then production is high. That means the bottom line is high. If it's the opposite, then guess what? Production goes down and so does your bottom line. So there's now, and most listeners don't know this. They have no idea, right, that this is even something that's available. Well, now they do. So that's why when people call me, they want me to do it all. Like, they'll call me and say, yeah, Dave, here's the deal. We're launching a new product, or this is going on, or sales are down. We need some motivation, or maybe they're at the top of their game and they just want to take it over the top. And so they come to me and say, Dave, we want you to do all of it. Here, we're going to write you a check. You come. Here's our, we find the venue together. I sit down with the client, find out who they are. What's their mission statement? What's their vision? What do you want me to say to these people to encourage them and inspire them? And then boom, board break, boom, firewalk. And then there's one other thing that I do out at the fire that's proprietary, where what it does is it gets everybody's heart to calibrate. So what happens is everybody's heart starts beating at the same time. And once we get there, the magic starts.
Dave, why don't you tell everybody how they can find you in Firewalk Adventures and how they can get in touch with you? Podcast.
Yeah, sure. Real simple. Firewalkadventures.com. It's one word, firewalkadventures with an S.com. Now, there is something that's going on that I'll do something here for all your listeners. I have the Dave Albin Firewalk Academy coming up in October, right? So now we've got companies and HR departments and trainers and coaches and entrepreneurs and business owners that can either come themselves to my academy, or they can send somebody and I'll train them how to do all this. So they can do, corporate firewalks, they can do backyard firewalks, they can do it all. I teach them the power of the storytelling, the board break, the brick break, the arrow break, the rebar bending, the firewalks, the glass walks, all of it. So they're going to spend a week with me up here in the Appalachian Mountains. And when they graduate, they're going to be, corporate team building extraordinaire. So that's coming October 3rd through the 7th. And so if anybody, I'm taking 9 people, by the way. There's a reason I do 9. I only do 9. I got 5 already. What's that?
Exclusive. I love it.
Yeah. Well, that way it's very intimate. I'm spending one-on-one time with those people, right? And again, I do that very specifically for a very powerful reason. So if anybody goes to our website in the top left corner, it says the Academy, click on it, look at it. If you like it, if you got an interest, we'll book a discovery call and I'll get you on the call. And I'm going to tell you straight up, if this isn't a fit and if I don't think it's for you, I'm going to tell you, because I don't want you here unless you're all in. Ain't interesting.
We don't know how to thank you for being on the podcast, because now we'll be able to promote this to the American Podiatrist Association, and Lord knows what they're going to pay us to sponsor this.
Can you imagine?
It'd be great.
Look at the kickbacks on that. By the way, if any of your people want to come to being on your amazing podcast here today, I'll give them a really nice discount, but they're going to have to give me a code. And the code is, so I recognize the Liquid Lunch podcast is 6828. Give me that code when we're talking, and I'll give them a substantial discount.
Thank you very much, Dave. That was very nice of you.
You bet. My pleasure.
6828, guys, write that down. Dave, we really appreciate you being here.
My pleasure, you guys. Put it off. Yeah.
I want to be respectful of your time. I have a question before I let you.
Sure.
Right. So you started off firewalking, changed your life, right? Absolutely. Then you did some glass walking. What else have you done that's got the adrenaline up?
I learned a lot of it I grew up in Southern California, so I did a lot of body surfing at the Wedge, which is one of the top body surfing places in the world. I did a lot of surfing, a lot of skiing, was very adventurous in that regard. But then again, I jumped out of an airplane in the military, did all that. carried a weapon, stood a post, did all that. But again, at the end of the day, it's like I've been chosen. Years ago, I'll close with this. Tony and I were doing an event down in Tampa, and there was a young collegiate athlete down there that got hit by a drunk driver, and he lost both legs, and he was contemplating suicide. One of his friends talked him to go in to see Tony because he liked Tony. Next thing I know, we're out there, got 6,000 people. We're doing the Firewalk. Next thing I know, there's this kid pulls up in a wheelchair. Tony bends down to talk to him about something. This kid pushes him off like, no, I got this. He turned that wheelchair and he turned it up to that lane. And the next thing I know, he positioned himself in his torso. He flung himself forward. He landed on his hands and he walked across the fire on his hands.
Wow.
At that moment, I knew what I was destined to do. And here I am, and I'm still doing it.
Dave, thank you so much for being here. Everybody, that's a wrap of the Liquid Lunch Project. We'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to the show. And make sure you subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend. We'll see you on the next episode of the Liquid Lunch Project.